Night fell quickly, bringing with it a damp, biting cold. I came home after a long day at school, mind worn out and wanting nothing but to relax. All week, my friends had been going on about a new game, Subway Surfers, and I couldn't help getting curious. After dinner, after the homework, I decided to download it to see what had them so obsessed. Phone in hand, I searched the App Store. The icon appeared, but something was wrong. Instead of a cheerful boy in a cap holding a paint can, there was a boy with a bloodless face, deep black eyes, and a paint can dripping a bright, blood-red liquid. My heart dropped. I told myself it had to be some weird coincidence, and tapped download anyway. When the download finished, I opened the game. The screen went pitch black for a few seconds. A cold shiver ran straight down my spine. After a moment, the game started, but it wasn't the way my friends had described. Jake, the main character, wasn't waving with a sunny grin. His smile was crooked and mean, his eyes glowing red. Blood streamed from Jake's mouth, blotching his white shirt. My heart hammered. I tried to quit, but nothing responded. Power, volume, home dead. I was trapped in a waking nightmare. With no choice, I pressed play. Hey! A voice blasted from the speaker, so loud I jolted and dropped the phone. Jake started to run, but the world around him was endless black. No tracks, no trains, no coins, only darkness and Jake's footfalls. After a few minutes sprinting through the void, the screen flashed to a grisly tableau. Jake lay sprawled across the rails, blood pouring from his back. From the darkness behind him, a tall shadow crept forward. It was the guard, but not a normal man. His eyes burned red. His mouth yawned open, rimmed with knife-sharp teeth. He bent and sank his teeth into Jake's neck. Blood sprayed everywhere. Horrified, I fumbled to shut the phone off. Nothing. The scene kept playing. The guard lifted his head, mouth slick with blood, and stared right at me through the glass. You guessed it, he rumbled in a low, chilling voice. I hurled the phone onto the bed and bolted from the room, heart trying to claw out of my chest. I grabbed the landline to call my kid brother, to ask if he'd seen anything like this. The ring clicked and a faint voice answered. The guard. I slammed the receiver down, shaking all over. This couldn't be real. I had to be dreaming, but when I looked back at my phone, the final image still burned clear, tricky and fresh. Lying dead on the tracks, blood leaking from their bodies. The shadow drew closer. I could hear the wet chew of flesh. Panicked, I fled upstairs, locked my door, and tried to stay awake until morning. Every time I closed my eyes, the same scene returned, so vivid it felt less like a game and more like a nightmare without end. Wind hissed outside the window. Rain ticked against the glass, weaving a bleak, haunted rhythm. I curled into the corner, eyes fixed on the phone. Now and then the black screen flickered with horrible images I couldn't look away from. Near dawn, exhaustion swallowed me. In my dream, I was the one running the tracks, not Jake, while the guard closed in, cold breath on my neck. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My legs felt cast in concrete. He reached for me, claws dug deep into my skin. I woke with a scream. Shirt plastered to my back with sweat. Pale morning light slipped through the curtains and offered the smallest comfort. But I knew I couldn't keep running. Day or night, this thing would keep haunting me until I found a way to end it or faced it. Over breakfast, I told my parents everything. They laughed, said I was joking or too wrapped up in a game. Mom told me to stop playing and focus on school. Dad told me to go outside and breathe fresh air. I nodded, tried to push the images away, and got through the day. But the blood, the guard, their weight wouldn't lift. When night fell, I checked my phone again. I needed proof that it had been a sleepless hallucination. Sitting on my bed, I opened Subway Surfers. The screen went black, then came back bright and normal, cheerful cartoons everywhere. I exhaled, telling myself I'd overreacted. I started a run. The change was immediate. Wasn't smiling. Fear tightened his face. The world dimmed. Coins gleamed like flecks of fresh blood. The rails were filmed with thick, tar black muck. I kept playing, trying to understand as Jake ran. I heard heavy breathing and pounding steps growing louder, as if someone was right behind us. Each footfall dragged me deeper into the dark. The screen jerked. Jake stumbled and fell onto the tracks. The guard approached, eyes lit hellish red, teeth like knives. He bent and bit Jake's neck. Blood geysered up. My heart slammed. I tried to exit. Every button was dead. The guard raised his head, locked eyes with me, and smiled that vicious smile. You guessed it, he said again, voice low and rotten. The display snapped to black, and somewhere in the house a door creaked open. Heavy steps. I froze in bed, shaking. The steps came closer. Harsh breathing waited outside my door. I remembered my parents' advice, but who would believe a game could birth a nightmare? How was I supposed to escape? The steps stopped at my door. Silence pressed in. The door eased open. A shadow stepped inside. I couldn't move. My heart rattled against my ribs. Dim hallway light only made it worse. It was the guard from the game. But he wasn't a cartoon. He was real, standing right in front of me. Run, he whispered like a nightmare-given voice. I stayed frozen. He came closer, eyes burning, teeth glinting. Desperation snapped me loose. I bolted from the bed and ran. My heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else. I flew down the stairs without looking back. His footsteps thundered behind me. In the living room, my parents sat on the sofa, eyes open, lifeless. I screamed their names. Nothing. Mom sagged forward, shirt torn, blood streaming down her back. Dad was worse, his neck cut deep, blood staining. The floor, I stumbled, tears hot on my cheeks. A brittle laugh crackled behind me. The guard watched, satisfied. This is only the beginning, he said, cold. Merciless. You'll go through everything they did. He advanced with a long, gleaming knife. I backed into the kitchen, grabbed a knife of my own, and gripped it hard. If I had to fight, I wouldn't go quietly. He lunged. Steel flashed. I slipped aside and drove my blade into his gut. Viscous green blood gushed out. Stinking. He roared and slammed me to the floor, pinning my arm. You think you can escape? He hissed and stabbed my shoulder. Pain tore through me. I screamed, but I didn't quit. With what strength I had, I kicked him off and scrambled upright. I had to get out. I tore the front door open and ran into the cold night. I ran and ran, praying I'd find someone, anyone. He didn't stop. His footsteps echoed, closing in. I glanced back. He was coming fast. Too fast. My legs buckled, but I forced them on. A distant street lamp flickered, some thin thread of hope. I sprinted for it, refusing to believe this was where I'd end. I knew the chase had just begun, and he wouldn't stop until I was his. I didn't look back. The road stretched dark and endless. I ran until my chest burned and my legs shook. A narrow alley opened along the main road. I slipped into it. It was nearly pitch black, lit only by far-off lamps. I tried to steady my breath and listen. Wind. My own heartbeat, then a sound behind me. A shape peeled out of the dark. The guard. Staring, eyes glowing like twin furnaces. I spun and ran the other way. Dead end. Panic fuzzed my thoughts. An old wooden door sagged in the wall. I shoved it open and slid into a cramped room cluttered with junk. I slammed the door and braced it with whatever I could find. Heart hammering. I searched for another exit. No windows. One interior door leading into a dark corridor. I took it. The corridor stank of mold and iron-rich blood. Noises came from everywhere, like something tracking each step I took. At the far end, another door, a larger room beyond, and I froze. Limbs hung from the ceiling. Blood dripped to the floor. Empty eyes stared. Mouths hung open with no sound. Wood splintered. The guard burst in, swinging a massive axe, hate burning in his gaze. Found you, he snarled, charging. I had nowhere left to go. He swung. I rolled aside. The axe smashed the floor with an ear-splitting crack. On a table, a butcher's knife glinted. I grabbed it. He rushed me again. This time I was ready. I drove the blade into him. Dark green-black blood erupted. He reeled but didn't. Stop. I slashed again and again, hard, precise, relentless, until he toppled and bled out in thick rivers. Shaking, I forced myself onward, back into the corridor, one foot in front of the other, deeper into the maze. Another door, another room. Secret lab, cold tables, strange devices, bodies opened and labeled, organs floating in cloudy jars. The stench of blood and chemicals clawed at my throat. A sound behind me. I turned, not the guard this time, but a creature, roughly human, skin. A sickly green, eyes glowing red with hunger, mouth full of needles. It stepped between me and the only exit. Fight or die. I tightened my grip on the knife. It came on, slow and deliberate, then exploded forward, claws scything the air. I dove aside. The first strike missed, but the second raked my forearm. Hot blood sheeted down. I lunged and plunged the knife into its side. Green blood spattered my face. It shrieked, stumbled, then hammered me in the chest. I hit the floor, breathless with pain, but crawled up again. An axe lay on the table. I snatched it and braced. The creature leapt. I swung for its head. The blade crashed down. Green blood and clotted matter splashed my clothes. It howled. I swung again, harder, and again, until it went still. I left the lab and pushed deeper into the passageways, door after door, room after room, a chamber packed with dissected bodies, organs stacked in glass. I kept moving. A scrape behind me. A man stepped in, empty eyes, a too wide smile, a large knife dangling from his hand. He came at me, slow and certain. I backpedaled. No way out. He lunged. The blade carved deep into my shoulder. White heat shot down my arm. I screamed and swung the axe across his skull. Blood and gray matter sprayed the walls. He staggered. I hit him again. He fell and didn't rise. I stumbled back into the hall, aching, half numb, still moving. Lights flickered, throwing warped shadows. My footsteps echoed like they belonged to the dead. Something dragged along the floor up ahead, mixed with heavy breathing. I froze, hoping it would pass, but a new monstrosity stepped into view, human-shaped, flesh torn back to bone, red eyes blazing, a huge axe scraping the ground. Cold washed through me. I ran room after room, some stacked with butchered bodies, some with obscene statues shaped from flesh. The worst part was the familiarity. I had seen these rooms in my dreams. The creature followed, its axe scratching a steady rhythm. I shoved into another room and pulled. The door. No lock, no time. On the table, heavy scissors. I grabbed them. The door flew inward. Red eyes, that terrible grin. The axe rose. I slipped aside. The blade smashed the table. I drove the scissors in deep. Green blood geysered out. It roared and swung again. Not fast enough. The edge bit into my arm. Pain blew the world white. I stabbed again and again until it crashed to the floor and lay still. I kept going into the dark. A faint, ragged sob tugged at me. A child crying. At the end of the corridor. A small room. A child chained to the wall, eyes huge with terror and hope. Reached for the shackles. The child screamed. Raw panic. Paintings lined the walls. Children tortured and murdered. Every instinct told me to run, but I couldn't leave the kid. I tried the chains again. The screaming climbed. Something was wrong, and the door slammed behind me. Darkness swallowed everything. I groped for the handle. Nothing. The dark pressed in, breath cold against my ear. Something moved close enough to touch. A frozen hand clamped my shoulder. I turned into a ruined face, empty eyes, a mouth stretched too wide. I screamed. The hand tightened and dragged me into the black. When I came to, I lay on a freezing floor beneath a hanging bulb that threw warped shadows across the walls. The room was windowless, plastered with grotesque images and strange relics, torture tools. Laid out beside a row of gleaming blades, I tried to piece together how I'd arrived. My head throbbed. No door I could see. No window. No way out. Hopelessness crept in, then footsteps. Heavy. Something dragging. I squeezed into a big wardrobe and pulled the doors shut. The steps reached the room. The door opened. Someone entered. Soft movements, searching. The steps reached the wardrobe and paused. My heart hammered. Then the steps receded. The door closed. I waited, then eased the wardrobe open. The room looked unchanged, empty, until a warped laugh leaked in behind me. In the doorway stood a corpse-colored figure, skin torn back to white bone, red eyes glowing, a butcher's knife. In its hand, I backed away. No escape. On the table, another pair of heavy scissors. Grabbed them as the thing lunged. Its knife slammed the tabletop. The blow rang through the room. I drove the scissors into its chest. Green blood gushed. It roared and slashed. The blade carved my arm open. I screamed, then stabbed again and again, until it folded and bled out across the floor. Back into the hallway. Again the faint sound of a child sobbing. Same door. Same scene. The child, the chains, the paintings. I reached. The child shrieked. The door slammed. Darkness swallowed me whole. Cold breath at my ear. A frozen hand on my shoulder, and I was dragged under once more. When my eyes adjusted, I was in a larger chamber. Candles guttered along the walls, casting warped shadows. Symbols were scrawled on the floor in blood. On rough wooden tables, bodies lay open, organs scattered, blood slicking every surface. The stench made me gag. The empty eyes of the dead fixed on me, hateful. A laugh unwound from the dark. A figure stepped forward, the man I'd seen before, but twisted now. Flesh split back to bone, eyes like coals. "Welcome to my hell," he said, voice low and terrible. "There's no way out. You'll pay for trespassing in my place." I backed away. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" He smiled, slow and rotten. "I was human once. I gave myself to the dark. I gather the lost souls who wander in. You're just another." "I never meant to come here," I said, shaking. "I just want to leave." He shook his head. His eyes burned brighter. "You stepped inside. That makes you mine." I scanned the tables. A small knife lay within reach. I snatched it up. He laughed. "You think that toy can hurt me? Naive." I lunged anyway. The blade sank in. Thick green blood oozed. He barely flinched. With one swipe, he knocked me sprawling. He raised his hand to finish it. A crash. The door behind me blew open. A man in dark clothes charged in with a heavy staff. He smashed it across the creature's skull. The thing reeled. The man struck again and again, clean, practiced blows. I didn't know who he was, only that he'd saved me. I staggered up, knife ready, and the creature roared and vanished into the dark. "We have to go. Now," the man panted. "This place isn't safe." I didn't argue. We ran, searching for a way through the maze. I knew it wasn't over. What I'd seen, what I'd survived, it felt like the first chapter of something worse. As we ran, I asked who he was and why he'd helped. "Me, I'm a survivor," he said, eyes forward. "I know what lives here. I'm not letting someone else suffer like I did." We stopped at a huge, rotten wooden door. "This is the way out," he rasped. "Or it's death. No guarantees." I tightened my grip on the knife and nodded. He shoved the door. It groaned open onto a long black corridor. We stepped through. The door slammed behind us, the sound ricocheting down the hall. A laugh rose at our backs. The creature returned, and with it came pale shapes drawn from the dark. Ghosts of the ones it had killed, souls trapped here. "We fight," the man said, lifting his staff. "There's no other way." The monster lunged, claws sweeping. I slipped aside and stabbed. Foul green blood spilled. The ghosts drifted closer. Empty eyes drilling into us. The man's staff flashed with strange light. Each time it struck the creature, it fell back, then hurled itself forward again. The ghosts pressed through us, dragging. Bone deep cold. My knife felt heavier with every swing. My arms slowed. The creature was too strong. Fear hollowed me out, but the man refused to yield strike after strike, until a ghost dove straight through him. He screamed and crumpled, sprinted toward him, and the creature blocked me, laughing that broken laugh. I ran for the far door. Freedom or death either way, I'd choose. It shrieked and chased. My legs felt shackled, but I drove them harder. The door was steps away. I slammed into it. It flew open. Blinding light flooded the corridor. The creature recoiled. I stumbled through and stood suddenly in a wide, empty field under the sun. I turned back. The door was gone. The darkness with it. I collapsed in the grass, gasping. I'd escaped, but the man hadn't. He'd saved me, and I would. Remember, I knew it still wasn't over. Whatever lived in that dark would come again. I walked the field until the sun dipped, and the air cooled. I needed shelter. An abandoned house sagged in the distance, roof jagged, windows shattered. Better than the open night. Inside, dusty light slanted through broken boards. Upstairs, a closed door. From behind it came a dragging sound. I opened it to an empty room, just a chair, a table, and an old wooden box humming faintly from within. I lifted the lid and reeled back. A human skeleton, disassembled and arranged with care. Beside it, glass. Jars of green liquid cradled a heart, a liver, lungs fresh preserved, untouched by decay. Footsteps behind me. A man stood in the doorway, clothes shredded and bloody, face lost in shadow, eyes dull and wet. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice rough with pain. "You don't belong here." "I just needed shelter," I said, trying to sound calm. "I don't mean any harm." He stepped inside, floorboards creaking. "You can't run," he said, pointing at the bones. "These spirits are waiting to be released, and you will free them." He opened a jar and lifted a heart, bright and slick, offering it to me. I couldn't raise my hands. "Why?" I whispered. "Because you crossed into the world of the dead," he said softly. "Everyone pays." I ran down the stairs, out into the cold, across the field. I could feel unseen souls pressing close, a tide of dread rising. When I looked back, the house was gone, only darkness swallowing the horizon. Morning light nudged my eyes open. I lay in the grass, freezing and sore. When I pushed to my feet, I realized I stood at the edge of a dense forest. I had no idea how far I'd wandered in the night. I started walking, searching for a way out. Branches whispered. Something paced me from behind. I sped up. The sounds kept pace, closer, heavier. I ran. Footsteps thundered after me. A tall, dark shape crashed through the trees and slammed me to the ground, pinning me. In a slash of sunlight, I saw its face, eyes red as fresh blood, jaws needle sharp. Its breath stank, hot and rotten. It raised a long claw, and I spotted a small knife glinting in the leaves. I stretched, reached, grabbed. The claw raked my face. Warm blood sheeted down. I stabbed upward with everything left in me, the blade buried in its left eye. It shrieked. Black-green blood poured out. I knifed its ribs. It writhed back, guts spilling onto the dirt. Voices, figures in protective gear burst through the trees with weapons drawn. They ringed the creature and fanned out. A man who looked like the leader knelt by me. "You okay?" he asked, voice low and steady. "We got a signal, an invasive entity in the area." I nodded, too breathless to talk. "We're getting you out," he said, signaling the team. They carried me to a nearby rescue camp and patched me up. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The dim bedside lamp only sharpened the shadows. A crawling sense of being watched crept over my skin, like someone stood at the edge of the bed, waiting. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One line, "Run." Ice flooded my veins. I lunged for the DoorDash lock. I yanked the curtain. Outside was only darkness. In the hallway, footsteps. The air tightened, flat and heavy. I turned toward the mirror, and a man with a corpse-white face and blood-red eyes grinned back. I spun and sprinted into the hall. The building had become a maze of shut doors. I was boxed in, and from every direction came laughter and footsteps. A chorus of WRONGNESS. In one room, doctors and rescuers lay on the floor, unmoving. Blood everywhere. They had saved me and died for it. I ran until I reached a broad room with a tall window. Outside, empty ground. No one in sight. The window groaned. Open, and a figure climbed in. A thing in a human-looking mask that wasn't human at all. I grabbed an iron bar and swung. It slipped, dodged, closed in. When my arms gave out, it pounced, claws flashing. Something hot surged up inside me. I tore the bar free and drove it forward. Black, viscous blood splattered the walls. The creature shrieked and collapsed. I sagged to the floor, lungs burning, the room warping like a bad dream. Sirens rose in the distance. Another rescue team rushed in and pulled me out. At the hospital, the doctors said I was lucky, no critical injuries, but luck doesn't reach into the dark. The images and sounds of that night still coil around me. An unsolved thing with red eyes, waiting just beyond the light. Whatever this is, it isn't done. And neither am I.